Let's go, folks. Time for the Gibby Show.
How you doing, baseball fans? Welcome to the 2023 playoff preview of the Gibby Show, presented by Miller Lite, the official beer of Major League Baseball and the Gibby Show. I'm John Arezian. Joining me, he is the two-time manager of the Toronto Blue Jays, the skipper of the 2015 and 2016 Jays playoff teams, the best-selling author of his memoir, Gibby Tales of a Baseball Lifer, also the narrator of the audiobook. Joining us, as always, the star of the Gibby Show, the baseball lifer himself, John Gibbons. Gibby, welcome to October, my friend.
Finally, huh? Gosh, what a long ride. We got here, though. This is when it really gets fun.
Yes, it is. It's October, and lots to talk about today. The Jays are heading to the postseason, and we'll begin the playoffs in Minnesota against the AL Central champion Twins in a best-of-3 wildcard round. We'll cover it all on today's Gibby Show. And later joining us on Gabbing with Gibby, brought to you by Tim Hortons, will be TSN's baseball analyst, Steve Phillips, to give us his thoughts on the Jays' postseason run. Plus, as always, inspired by our friends at Miller Lite, we will have another roast and toast. But Gibby, it's an important one. Let's get right to the leadoff. It wasn't easy. It wasn't pretty. To some, it was a little anticlimactic. The last week of the regular season was another emotional roller coaster, but hey, it was what we were used to during this entire 2023 campaign. It was the Blue Jays. And as you said all along, Gibby, just get in. And just get in, they did, finishing with the third wild card spot for a final record of 89 and 73. The Blue Jays are indeed going to the postseason. Now, Gibby, first off, this team grinded all season long. Great pitching, great defense, great bullpen. Offense, not overwhelming throughout the season, but got the job done, and it got nerve-wracking and scary during this final weekend. Is this just the makeup of this team, a team where nothing will come easy with the 2023 Jays, or is this the time this rebranded team from a hit-first strategy to a more complete pitching defense team excels in the postseason? Is this team built for October?
Yeah, I mean, people are never satisfied, for crying out loud. He's got to get into the dance, and they did. You know, and they won 89 games, and yes. That ain't a bad thing. But like you said, the bottom line, just get in. And yes, they are built to be successful. They could win it all. I really believe that, because they have the pitching, they have the defense. And you look at, their offense came to life there at the end of the season.
It did.
They ran into a couple buzzsaws, with Cole and the other kid for the Yankees. But before that, they swung the bats down in Tampa against a team that at the time they thought they were going to be playing. And then of course, they end up they got beaten that extra inning game Saturday, but they end up clinching anyway. But they swung the bats in that series. So yeah, it's one of those things. Everybody wants until somebody's crowned a champion. Everybody wants this wants it, but it doesn't work that way. They're in a good spot because they have that pitching, they got that bullpen, they got defense, they got some gamers, they got some guys that I think are going to rise to the top. And they put it this way, they have as good a shot as anybody.
Yeah, they do. And that offense did really come alive. I mean, after they were mowed down, like you say, by Garrett Cole and the younger Yankee pitcher, but their bats did come alive. They had a really, really good offense over the weekend. It seems like this is all starting to come together, and there's some clutch hitting there. So it looks really good. I mean, everything seems to be coming together at the right time. This is the best time of the year for it to come together. I do want to address with you, though, because everyone felt it was going to be the Rays against the Blue Jays, and now there's been a switch. They're playing Minnesota. They're in a different bracket. How do the Twins, Minnesota Twins, now match up against the Blue Jays as you head into a best of three?
Well, I do think the Blue Jays will win it. Minnesota's a little bit different look now. 2 months ago, you would have said, they're in the playoffs because they're in the Central Division. That's the only reason, right? But their offense has come to life. One thing about the Twins, they always have pitching. They always play pretty good fundamental baseball. That's just kind of their calling card, right? But they've never had the firepower unless you go back to the Kelly era managed teams, and when Jack Morse is on the mound and those kind of teams when they last time they won it. But they're always good, solid teams. But now their offense has come to life the last couple of months, and so you look at them a little bit differently. But do they have enough? I don't think so. And I think they're, they can hit some home runs now, but the Blue Jays pitching in my mind is just a little bit too strong for them.
Yeah. Speaking of pitching, these are heavy decisions when a manager has to decide, all right, who's my opener? Who's going to pitch game 2? Who's going to pitch game 3 if it goes to 3 games? Take us through the mind of a manager and explain about all of those decisions that have to be made in regard to setting up the pitching, setting up the bullpen. So take us through that as you have experienced it before in your days as managing the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, you know what, Johnny, naturally, if things line up, if you're not having to use your ace just to get in, and, he's not ready for the first round of the playoffs or whatever. You always go with your top guy. But that's where the Blue Jays are sitting pretty, because they have so many good pitchers, right? And if they struggle early, they got a dynamite bullpen. A lot of times, I can only speak for myself. In 2016, right? That was when wild card game was really a wild card game, because it's one game. Winner take all, you go home, right? And so it's either win now or adios. But we were playing Baltimore, and we had a choice of 2. We could be either Stroman or Francisco Liriano, right? And Stroman, and people say, well, that should have been easy, but it wasn't, because Liriano dominated Baltimore, right? Mm-hmm. And but he could run into spurts where he'd walk guys, and you always feared that in the one game you got to win all, right? Then you had Stroh. And it was, but Liriano was so good against him. You brought him into the equation. But we all said he's got to be Stroh. He's our guy out there. And I even went to Russell Martin, our big boy behind the plate, our team leader, just to confirm things. I wanted to hear what his thoughts. And he said, it's got to be Stroh. He's our guy. And these are the kind of games he thrives. Of course, we started Stroh. He did a great job. Liriano ended up getting in at the end when Osuna had hurt his shoulder, and ended up finishing off for us. So yeah, that was kind of the emotional side of it, or you're judging, you're going with your character, you're the guy you want in a big game, guy that's been there, done that, that you can really trust. The game's a little bit different now. They might be all throw it all in the computer and let's see what that spits out. But it just shows you the human element in big games. You want that guy is not going to shrink, and that's why we went with Strome.
Yeah, it's a certainly emotional time. It's going to be wonderful to watch it unfold. You are listening to the Gibby Show, presented by our friends at Miller Lite, and it is officially the postseason, Gibby. And if you're tuning in from Toronto, you may want to listen up. The Rec Room and Miller Lite are throwing a viewing party to watch the American League wildcard games this week. And Gibby, I guess if you were up there, you'd be hanging out at the Rec Room with everybody else, wondering who was going to win and rooting on the Jays. That is a pretty big deal for this viewing party.
Yeah, what a great idea. Go there and have a few Miller Lights with the boys, your families, friends. And,
and with everybody else that's going to be going crazy watching these games. So
exactly. You watching postseasons now in all sports, and people that aren't actually at the game, they're out outdoors in the certain areas, and they put the big screens up so everybody can watch it together, and this is what they're doing there. So that's instead of sitting on your couch by yourself watching it, go down there to the Rec Room, hang out with some people, and enjoy hopefully a W.
It's the most exciting way to watch a game. If you're with like-minded fans rooting for your team in an atmosphere like that at the Rec Room, I would recommend everybody heading down to the Toronto Rec Room right across from the stadium, enjoy a Miller Lite, and have a chance to win some merch as well. Visit the Rec Room social page for more details. Tastes like Miller time, baseball fans. And also one other thing, Gibby, there's still time to go to Instagram and potentially win one of the 2 Miller Lite autographed baseball jackets signed by you. To enter, follow at John Gibbons 05 and at Miller Lite CA on Instagram. You tag a friend, Full rules are in the bio. Contest ends October the 3rd, so get in there quickly at 11:59 p.m. Eastern time. What a great response we've gotten so far for that also, Gibby. Everybody wants those signed jackets from you.
Well, I don't know if it's a part that's signed. I tell you, they're fancy jackets, man. I tell you what, if you're looking for attention or if you're low key, you're not going to want one. But if you want to you want to stand out and be shining, and people go, wow, ooh, you better sign up and try to win you one of those.
Pretty cool jackets. Go to Instagram, of course, at John Gibbons05 and at Miller Lite CA. Tag a friend, and you just might win one of these jackets.
Corner booths, sticky floors, weekdays that feel like weekends. You never forget the way some things taste. Miller Lite, great taste, 90 calories. Tastes like Miller time.
And give you one final thing. You already picked the Jays over the Twins in the first round of the playoffs. Are you still sticking with your beginning of the season prediction that it's going to be the Atlanta Braves against the Toronto Blue Jays in the World Series?
Yeah, I am. To begin with, the Blue Jays have a better team than the Twins. Much more firepower. And then I think they could go through Houston and eventually get there and play the Braves. That would be, I don't know if it was 92 or 93 they played in the World Series. Hey, it'd be nice to see that again.
Yeah.
Plus I'd feel pretty good to my ex-employers, man. I think, what?
Exactly.
There's a lot of friends on both sides. So yeah, and I think they're fully capable. You never know. Who you look at the Phillies last year. If somebody gets hot, they got a chance to run this thing, and so you never know. That's the beauty of the playoffs. And, that's what's so good about the wild cards, where now you get, it's like the other sports now. You got more teams in it, and it's really exciting. It's been incredible for the sport.
And it's the most exciting time of the year, and we'll keep a close watch on it, and then, of course, report on all of it right here.
Do you think Taylor Swift will be there at one of the games? You think Taylor Swift will show up at the game?
That is ridiculous, first and foremost. I mean, what has happened to football with Taylor Swift influencing fans, merch sales? It's crazy. It's crazy. How long will it last?
It's incredible, man. That's the beauty of it all.
Yes, it is. That will wrap up the lead off. And now it's time for Gabbing with Gibby, brought to you by Tim Hortons. Gibby, are you a hockey fan?
Oh, yeah. I don't completely understand the sport, but yeah, I'm a huge fan because the toughness of it. And, I've done it since I left Toronto. I did a few banquets with some hockey players. And get this, first hockey game I ever went to was in Montreal, 1984 Stanley Cup game in the old Montreal Forum, the Islanders against the Montreal Canadiens. Now, if that doesn't fire you up or get you excited, I don't know what is. I couldn't play it. I probably wasn't tough enough. It's like most of these guys in MLB, they couldn't play. They ain't tough enough, but I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, you go. And speaking of how exciting hockey is, hey, Canada, Tim's NHL trading cards are back with an all-new set. So get ready to unpack the thrill and score your favorite hockey stars. Grab them before they're gone. Starting today, October the 2nd, only at Tim's.
That time of year, man, it's hockey season. It's the best time of year. You got that, you got football, you got baseball playoffs, basketball's right around the corner, and we become soft in this. All we want to do is entertainment.
Today on Gabbing with Gibby, brought to you by Tim Hortons, we bring on one of the premier baseball analysts in the game. He is the MLB analyst for TSN and TSN Radio. He's host of the leadoff spot on Sirius XM's MLB network, a former general manager of the New York Mets. Let's welcome back to the Gibby Show and Gabbing with Gibby, Steve Phillips. Steve, how you doing?
I'm doing great, guys. Good to be with you, and I've missed gabbing with you, so I'm glad to get back and do a little bit talking baseball.
It's a good time to gab.
Well, we were waiting for the perfect spot for you, man. Because you know what, you are one of the experts. In this business, all you got to do is listen to your predictions and all that. And I think John might have some of your predictions how you called this, and I think it fell in line perfectly. So we got the right guy at the right time. Read it off, Johnny.
Well, I tell you, I mean, that last column that you wrote, basically it said, quote, "I believe the season will come down to the final weekend, but the Jays will hold on and make the playoffs as the third wildcard team because they will be tied with the Rangers at 90 wins." That was a little off.
Right.
The Mariners will not make the playoffs, while the Astros will win the AL West. Now, spot on.
Pretty close. Yeah. You know, it was one that Seattle's schedule was so daunting. I mean, you know, they had the last 10 games, they had 7 of them against Texas and 3 against Houston, which put them really in a tough spot with those 2 teams. And Houston, just that experience factor for me. And again, it came down to the last day of the season, right, where they edge out Texas. And with the tiebreaker, they win the division, which then pushes Texas into that second wild card spot because they had the tiebreaker over the Blue Jays. So in the end, the Blue Jays, you know what? It's not the worst thing maybe to be the third wild card, to be able to play Minnesota, to avoid playing Tampa. Because remember, if you had played Tampa, I'm curious, Gibby, your thoughts. If they had played Tampa, it would have been games 7, 8, and potentially 9 of the last 12 games that they had played against each other. That's a lot of familiarity. And I didn't love that so much for the Blue Jays.
Yeah, I agree. We were talking about that, the other day, and it's like, gosh, regardless of you get all the info and all that, you're playing each other, you get sick of watching. If you're a fan, you're going, can we watch anybody else play? And yeah. But I think the big thing is they can dodge the house of horrors down there, even though 10 days ago they won 2 out of 3 down there in Tampa. There's something about that place that's and they have magic down there. That's all I can say.
Well, I think the other thing is that it allows them to avoid Baltimore too, who really had dominated them all year. The Jays were 21-31 against the American League East this year. They did not fare well against everybody else. They played pretty well. They did not play all that well against the East, and so avoiding Tampa, then avoiding Baltimore, at least in the division series, I think is an advantage for the Blue Jays. And because over 7-game series, then I like their chances a little bit better against Baltimore. But Baltimore really dominated them over the course of the season. So now they get to play, in the Minnesota Twins, and if they win, they play the Astros. And again, that's a challenge. There's no question about it. But they fared better against Houston in Minnesota than they did against both Tampa and Baltimore this year.
No doubt about it. All right, Johnny, fire away, Steve. This is going to be money, right? We're going to take this to Vegas.
Yeah, we are. Absolutely. It really was an exciting end to the season. But the Jays don't make anything easy. When you look at the Jays matching up against the Twins head to head, who do you give the advantage to? What are the weaknesses on both sides and the strengths?
Yeah. So it's interesting because, the Jays offense is really the one thing that's just been inconsistent. That's what the best ERA in the American League for the year. And they've got depth of starting pitching, the Blue Jays. They've got swing and miss stuff in the bullpen now, which they didn't really have with Swanson and with Hicks and with Romano. They've got swing and miss stuff out there, so which I really like. And what they learned last year against Seattle is you need swing and miss stuff out of the bullpen in the playoffs. Those contact guys, the ball flares in, you find a hit, they put it in play, a productive out, a sac fly, and you've got to try to get strikeouts. And so, the Jays are better in that regard. Just their offense has been inconsistent. The thing about Minnesota is their starting pitching has been really good. Now, they've got Pablo Lopez, who they got in the deal from the Marlins, and they have Sonny Gray 1-2. And those 2 guys are very good. Lopez, an outstanding changeup. And for Sonny Gray, he's got the really very good curveball. Both of them can locate their fastballs, not necessarily overpowering, but you've got to be able to handle the off-speed stuff and not get caught in between. And that's where the Jays have had some difficulty this year. It feels like to me that sometimes Toronto is behind the fastball and in front of the breaking ball, that they're sort of in between, and therefore it's hard to hit either, right? I've always preferred to say, look for the fastball, adjust to the off-speed. It seems to me like they get caught in between a little bit, particularly Vladdy with that. But, the other thing for Minnesota is their offense, early in the season, pre-All-Star, they were middle of the road offensive team. After the All-Star break, they're the second highest scoring offense in the American League, and their power bats started to develop. So, they had Royce Lewis start to come through, a young guy at the big league level. And this Matt Wallner came up, and he's got great raw power, a kid from the Minneapolis area up there. And so they started hitting a lot of home runs. And in the playoffs, home runs can work, right? I mean, a bloop and a bomb can pay dividends. So they're a team. Be careful what you wish for, because they're better than what their record really indicates, because they do have that power production and really good starting pitching and some arms out of the bullpen. So I'd rather play them than Tampa Bay for sure. But they're not going to be a pushover. The other thing that is a factor, though, is that they've lost 18 straight playoff games, the Minnesota Twins. Going back to 2003, game one of the ALDS against the Yankees, they won that, and they lost 13 straight against the Yankees, 18 straight overall. So there is, and even though it's different players, there is that feeling that when something goes wrong, because they're going to get asked over and over again, why don't you guys win playoff games? Why don't you win playoff games? And then when something goes wrong, it'd be like, oh, that's why we don't win playoff games. So there is that sort of other thing that the Twins have to get over that could prove to be an advantage for the Jays.
Hey, but you know what, too? The baseball guys might be tired of crapping on them. They might say, all right, we'll give you guys a break here. But I agree with you. You know what? The one thing we both seen the Twins over the years, right? They've always been a good, solid pitching team, good fundamentals. They can execute with the bats. They never really had the big firepower of some of the other teams. And if you look at this team this year, a couple months ago, like you were saying, you would have thought, no, they get in the playoffs, it's going to be two and gone, right? But their offense has come to life, which all of a sudden makes you think, okay, and then they have some pretty good pitching that should keep them in the game anyway. So it should be a great series. I wouldn't be surprised if we went 3 games.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either. I think the Jays are the better team. The better team, but I just don't know what to expect out of the offense for Toronto. The season has felt so much like they've started and stopped. They've never really sort of hit that rhythm to roll. That being said, they made the playoffs, right? And so, I mean, they're there, and they can get hot at the right time. Now, everybody I talk to, executives on teams, managers of other teams, they are afraid of Toronto. They think the Blue Jays are a team that just has so much talent that they could roll through the playoffs. And so they are a bit of a sleeping giant, but I don't think anybody can dismiss Minnesota. Correa is a big factor. Had the plantar fasciitis. It's unclear, what he's going to come back and be activated, but you wonder where he's going to be. Royce Lewis, big power bat, hamstring issue. Where is he going to be? Buxton is working, trying to fight his way back into it. So it's hard to know exactly what the Twins are going to look like, but they're going to pitch well.
Yeah. We'll put it this way. It should be a good series. It really should. You know what? Let me ask you, now that it's 2 out of 3, the wild cards, I remember I liked it better when it was just one game. Here we go, boys. You guys, you didn't win the division. One game, it's on the line. What do you think? I mean, I think for the baseball, the fans love too, but. Yeah,
no, it's interesting. I think there's a couple things with it. That the idea that 2 out of 3, the reason they're doing it is thinking, geez, do we want just one? Will teams invest at the trade deadline if you're going to get one game in a wild card? And I think we've seen more teams be aggressive at the trade deadline because they feel like it's not one and done, but they could still win and take 2 out of 3. So there's a little bit better chance that the better roster could prevail, and that it's not just dumb luck in one game as to what could happen. I think the other thing about the wild card that I think should be looked at is, so for instance, Minnesota has the worst record of the 3 wild card teams in this wild card format, right? The Blue Jays have a better record than the Minnesota Twins do. So does Tampa Bay, so does Texas. And yet Minnesota, because they won the division, gets to play the least wild card team. I personally think that they should seed the wild card round based upon the 1-loss record. So it would be Tampa Bay would play Minnesota and Texas would play Toronto, would, I think, be a more fair representation of what the wild card round would be. They want to reward the division winner, but especially with a balanced schedule right now, I don't know that necessarily needs to happen. And I don't think it's fair that Minnesota, with the worst record of the 4 teams playing in the wild card round, gets to play Toronto, when I think that they should play the team with the best record overall.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what? Like you said, the worst record of all the wild cards, and yet they're in the weakest division too. So what is that?
Right.
You know, I agree with you, man. Have you brought that forward to the commission yet?
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, it's been out there, and they've hesitated on doing it. But I will tell you that I think that you're going to see at the GM meetings this year a lot of general managers talking about that, because all we're really wanting to do is have a fair representation that your record during the regular season matters, even if you don't win the division. And especially now, because of the format where we balance the schedule, we're playing everybody now. And it's not just, this division might be a little tougher than another division. And I think it's pretty clear that of the teams, Minnesota is probably the least of the six, although very capable, the least of the six in the American League.
Right. Okay. Johnny, what do you got, man?
Steve, I want to get an opinion on Schneider and the way he may be using the back end of the bullpen in this series. He put Jordan Hicks in recently over Romano in a situation. Do you think he's going to be more relying on Romano as the closer, or he's going to kind of maybe use this depending on the situation between the fireballer, which is Hicks,
right,
and his standard closer, which is Romano?
Yeah, so he went with Romano facing the heart of the lineup, I think, in like the 7th inning or 8th inning, and then Hicks came in afterwards. I don't think the differential between Romano and Hicks is that substantial that I would take guys out of roles. I personally would have Romano pitch the 9th and have Hicks pitch the 8th, or some part of the 7th and the 8th with Swanson in the mix there too, and work in Meza, and maybe you're working Kikuchi somewhere along the way there from the left side. But I don't think that Romano's that much different than Hicks that I would take him out of the 9th inning. I think there's a comfort level there that for most of the season, Romano's pitched the 9th. And I get that maybe he is your best reliever, but I think the differential between Romano and Hicks is not worth the differential in the feeling for the pitchers about pitching in that comfort role of the 9th inning for Romano or 7th or 8th inning for Hicks. So I would tend to do it more conventionally with having a closer pitch the 9th inning, just because this is the format for what I think would work for this Blue Jays team. Gibby, what do you think on that?
Yeah, well, you know what, Steve, they got such a good bullpen. I mean, they can fire it. You could just flip coins or bring anybody out because they have those kind of arms. I think what happens, and you're a psychology major, right?
School? Yeah.
That's perfect for this. What we're talking about here. Romano's been your guy, right? All of a sudden, he maybe struggled. He struggled last or 2 weeks ago down in Tampa. He, got low blooded with a little bleeder. They lost the game in Tampa. Right. And so everybody's thinking, the sky's falling. He can't close games out anymore. But in his mind, he's the closer, right? And this late in the season, you jerk him out of that role. Now, you know what? Things creep in. Now I'm not good enough, this and that, blah, blah, blah. They don't all think that way, but the majority of them do, right? Now you put Hicks in there, and Hicks, all of a sudden, he hasn't been the closer here with Toronto. You put him in there, now the pressure ramps up on him a little bit instead of just leave. It's time to ride the horses that got you there. I think, so you don't let any of this get in the way.
Yeah, I'm with you. So I kind of look at the bullpen as a living, breathing organism, all of the guys out in the bullpen, and the head is the closer. And when the closer's right, then the rest of the bullpen is right. Yeah. When the closer's off sync, then the rest of the bullpen might get off sync. But if you actually rearrange it, I think it affects everybody that way. Even the guys who might come in the 6th inning of the game, because I think that it's a unit out there, and the head is the closer, and that predictability for the 9th inning of the guy that you have out there, I think is really important. Now, other bullpens, maybe the key pitcher, like you look at Tampa, sometimes Fairbanks will pitch in the 7th inning or 8th inning because of the way they've done it. And it's their predictable way of using their pen. And so that living, breathing organism's head is a little bit different. Fairbanks is still that guy, but they're okay moving him around because it's the way everybody's accepted it. I don't see the Jays that way. And so I personally would lock down Romano in the 9th inning. Yeah, I agree. Because like you said, Tampa's been doing that all year. Right. So those guys expect that. Now it's going to be, you're getting in somebody's head. It's like, how it is with, as stupid as it is sometimes, you start juggling your batting order, you take somebody, unless somebody's struggling,
these guys go, what's going on here, man? I'm not here, or and it gets in their mind, and they start, and it shouldn't happen, but that's why the thing that separates in baseball is not always talent. It's these guys up here. They're strong here.
I mean, that is absolutely. I mean,
it's everything.
When it comes to managing, it's one thing to write up a lineup and the X's and O's, when to take a guy out. That's part of the decisions for sure. But knowing what's going on in your players' heads, you don't manage stats, you manage people. And so I'm in on analytics, and I like analytics. I think that it's a tool to use, but it's not the numbers that play the game. It's people who play the game, and the way they think, the way they feel affects how they play. And then it can link to everybody else on your roster, everybody else in the lineup. And that's the job of the manager, is to really understand your guys in a way, talk to them in a way to be able to put them in the right position to succeed. And look, in some ways, I think John Schneider this year, when Springer was 0 for 30 something, he did move him out of the leadoff spot in the lineup. And honestly, I actually thought at that point it was probably the right move to make. And in some ways, even if it made Springer uncomfortable, he needed to get a little uncomfortable to get back on track. And, he hit the home, or got a base hit, and he sort of wanted the ball, and he laughed a little bit. But I also think Belt sort of moving up in the lineup to the 2 spot, I do like that for them. Bichette going down to 4 wasn't the worst thing overall. So they've made some moves. Springer back in the leadoff is the right thing. Vladdy in the 3 hole. And then you but I think that one of the keys, I think, for the Jays are the left-handed bats. I think you're looking at Belt, Varsho, and Biggio are all really important guys. And all 3 of them feel like they're starting to swing the bat a little bit right now. I think Biggio's been terrific. He's made some great defensive plays for them. He's elevated his game, and Varsho looks like he's finally getting comfortable. And I do think the left-handed bat's going to be really important against the changeup for Lopez and against the breaking stuff for Sonny Gray and the 2-seamer. And so I think that and they've got some of those guys who look like they're coming on a little bit right now.
Tim's NHL trading cards are back. Unpack family fun. Score your favorite icons with an all-new set. Get yours before they're gone. Only at Tim's.
What do you got, Johnny?
I really want to have you look into the crystal ball now, since you were so spot on in your last column. Who's going to win, Jays or Twins?
Now, are you going to keep me on camera when I flip the coin here? Because I kind of flipped the coin to come up with these predictions. No, I do think that the Jays are going to win this series, and I do. I think they're going to win it in 2 games. I think the losing streak for Minnesota is going to go to 20. I think the Jays, especially if they get game 1, and I think Gausman. The other big thing for getting into the playoffs on Saturday, it protected using Gausman on Sunday, which was critical. And I think it was the difference maker for the Jays going into this series. Gausman's been so good. He's a guy that keeps the ball in the ballpark against a team that hits, swings for the fences, which I like. And he can get some ground balls where, Carlos Correa led all of baseball in hitting into double plays this year. And so, to get a guy on base in front of him and to get Gausman to get a ground ball double play could be critical. The defense of the Jays I like. So I do have the Jays winning this series in 2 games.
Excellent. You want to give us your predictions, what your thoughts are on the other series in the American League and the National League?
Sure. Yeah. So I think the Rays beat the Rangers. I mean, the Rangers, what a horrible day they had on Sunday. They lost the division. They, instead of having 5 days off, they have to jump right into a wild card and have to fly from Seattle to Tampa. Like, can you imagine that flight? Now, it was long enough that maybe they could transition from feeling horrible about themselves to feeling a little bit better about being in the playoffs. But I don't know that they recover from that devastation. They're the one team that got to October and felt bad about themselves, right? They're the one playoff team and they feel bad about themselves because of what happened. So I think Tampa Bay beats them in 2 as well. In the National League, I think the Phillies beat the Marlins. I think the Brewers beat the Diamondbacks. I think the Phillies and Diamondbacks actually sweep those series too. And I think the Phillies and the Brewers sweep the Diamondbacks. I think the Brewers and Phillies are sleepers. I think Milwaukee has the pitching. They can beat Atlanta and they can beat Los Angeles. I don't know the Phillies with where Nola's been this year. But I had Atlanta and Toronto in the World Series preseason. I'd still go that direction with it. I think Baltimore beats Tampa Bay, and I think Toronto beats Houston, and then Toronto beats Baltimore. Remember, go back to 1988. I think the Dodgers and Mets, if I recall, I think the Mets they dominated the other side the entire season, but in the playoffs, it flipped the script. I think that it doesn't matter in the playoffs that Baltimore dominated. I think Baltimore's pitching is a little bit short. They've surprised me this year. I think Toronto can outpitch them. I think they can beat Baltimore in the LCS. And I'm looking at an Atlanta-Toronto World Series.
You know what, Stevie? That's exactly what I picked. But my two employers, my latest employers. Yeah. So I was kind of front running a little bit,
That's all right. I called it the Alex Anthopoulos World Series, right? I mean, he's done such a good job in Atlanta, and they're a powerhouse. And Fried's going to be back with Spencer Strider in the rotation, and they'll have Kyle Wright in the bullpen. And I think the Jays starting pitching is as good as anybody, and they can throw more quality innings than anybody else because of the depth of that pitching staff.
Hey, I got to ask you something, because about the Dodgers, right? You look at it clearly. They got the reputation. You look at what they've done the last few years. You know what? Sooner or later, you got to win. They won that year, the COVID year. That didn't count.
Right.
That was short. That doesn't count as far as championship. Sooner or later, these teams that run away with it and they got the reputation, they got to start winning, or otherwise it's you go back to the Atlanta Braves for 13 straight championships or divisions, right? And they won one World Series.
Right.
I know it's not that easy, obviously, especially with the extra rounds and things like that. But sooner or later, those teams got to win it, man. And people think, you know what?
Yeah, I'm with you. And here's the thing: I look at the Dodgers, and I don't love their chances, which is why I could see Milwaukee sort of making a run, because you got Kershaw, who's been good, but he's a 5-inning pitcher right now.
Yeah.
And he's not pitched all that well in the postseason in the 6th and 7th inning. I mean, he's had a great career. And then Bobby Miller, who's a wild card, he's got a great arm, but he could give you a 2 2/3 inning clunker, just like he might go 7 shutout innings. Hard to know what to expect. Now they're going to score. Freddie Freeman is amazing. Betts is amazing. Yeah. But I don't love their bullpen either in Los Angeles. And so I think there's a vulnerability there. I don't see them being the year that they can make the run this year. And yet, the other thing is, when you look at Milwaukee, they're the one team that goes 3 deep with really good starting pitching. Everybody else can give you 2, Wheeler and Nola, Kershaw and Miller. You can look at, all these teams in the, you can go Fried and Strider, but after that, there's some question marks, right? Bryce Elder.
Yeah.
And so the one team that has 3 legit dominant starting pitchers are the Milwaukee Brewers, which is why, I even before the season, I thought that they had a shot to do it. And may have put a couple of shekels on Milwaukee at the beginning of the year to win the World Series, when it was like plus 3,500 for them to do it, because, I just liked their pitching and thought they had a chance to get there.
Exactly. That's just like the Blue Jays. They got pitching galore, when you compare them, and that's what wins in the end, right? The pitching and defense. Yeah, you got to score. There's no doubt about it. But you know what? The championship teams, you got to have something on the mound. You're not going to outslug anybody to the top.
Absolutely. Well, good pitching can shut down good hitting, and you see good pitching among these playoff teams. What's going to be really interesting, though, is how does the stolen base come into play? Right, we saw stolen bases through the roof this year. Most attempts we've had in more than a decade. But the ability to manufacture runs is more applicable this year than it has been ever before. Right, we've seen Arizona lead the league in stolen bases. They can hit some home runs, but they can, a single can become a double can become a triple. Guys score from first base because of the speed of, the extra bases, limitations on throwing over, and the bigger secondary leads. And so that is going to be an interesting perspective, where in the past, home runs prevailed in the postseason. Yeah. I think the stolen base is going to be a factor this year.
Oh, hey, you're right. It's a different look. I got to ask you before we let you go here too, though, because with the rule changes, going back to that, right? Yeah, it's the bigger base. The base paths are a little bit shorter, not a lot, but a bit, right? And that's encouraging. I still don't understand how you can put limitations on how you can work the runner at first base. You could. I mean, is that really?
Listen, I'm with you on it, and it would not have been something I would have put limitations on, because, the whole thing is, you tell a manager, go out there and win a game. And then you say, oh, yeah, but you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do that to try to win a game. Well, I mean, then I guess what everybody has to do is start to build their team with speed. And if you can't beat them, join them. because this is the rule. And so, but the idea of having to reconstruct rosters, I mean, the Yankees, got old and got slow. And in this era of baseball where speed and athleticism are a factor, they were built for a different way to hit the ball over the wall. And with shifts where range didn't matter defensively, you could have an older guy because you were able to put 3 infielders on the right side of second base. And so LeMahieu didn't hurt you there. Rizzo didn't hurt you there. Now you take that away, and some teams were not prepared athletically for these rules. And so it's going to take some time to make some adjustments. And listen, you know what? The rules are the rules. People are getting worked up. They should change the pitch clock, pitch timer. Listen, in the NFL, if somebody takes a delay of game penalty on a final drive of the game and it costs them, we don't get mad at the rule. We get mad at the quarterback for not getting the playoff. Same thing in baseball. If a pitcher gets busted on a pitch timer violation, don't get mad at the rule. Get mad at the pitcher. He's had enough time to make the adjustment. These are the rules. Get ready to go play for him.
And, well, one more though. When the 3 batter minimum you got to face, right? That one bothers me too, because on any given night you bring a reliever in, he may be a reliable guy for you, right? And he just doesn't have it that night, and he's got to face 3 guys. The game can fling like switch like that. You change. And it takes away from the lefty specialist a little bit. Those guys have got to be able to get right-handers out now. I just think it puts you at it's not fair, let's say, because those guys aren't good every night, and you ought to be able to, if this guy doesn't have it, man, boom, especially in postseason baseball.
Yeah, here's the thing. I look at it and think, why is it okay for the opposing team to pinch hit for the batter and they can change him, but you can't change the reliever? I mean, that just doesn't feel right. I understand it's a time issue, that it doesn't take that much time to change a hitter. But what we're effectively saying is we're going to give the offense an advantage because you get to make a change to adjust to the pitcher they're bringing in, but you can't adjust for the pitcher either. And again, I get it. I don't love it. It's one of those rules that I like situational left-handers and the strategy of the game. It did slow it down, and I do love the pace of play. And here's the thing. I'm probably willing to sacrifice it for the pace of the game because I think it's been much better product overall. But from a competitive point of view, I'm with you, man. Like I don't, it's hard enough to win games. Don't tell me I have to try to do it with one arm tied behind my back when I go out there and try to play. And for managers, I hate it for you guys.
Yeah. I think it kind of hamstrings you a little bit,
Yeah,
so.
It does.
Well, all right, Johnny, you got anything else before we let Steve go? He's a busy man. He's got to.
Yes,
we got to send him to Vegas, man.
Yes, exactly. As you guys were just talking about managers and how it affects the way a manager can, strategize a game. It's the end of the season. The axe is already starting to fall on some high-profile managers in major markets. Steve, wanted to get your opinion on what's happened in New York, what's happened in San Francisco.
Right.
And Cleveland, that obviously Francona leaves on. He had a great career. He's stepping down. But the other 2 markets, I mean, the teams really handled those firings in a very unusual way, really.
Yeah, no, they did. I mean, the Gabe Kapler one was interesting because Larry Baer, the president, came out and said both Farhan Zaidi, the president of baseball operations, and Kapler were safe. But then something changed. And I think at some point,
kiss of death.
Yeah, right. I mean, and so they make the change there. And for the Mets, you got David Stearns coming in. It's probably not a surprise. It probably wasn't a surprise to Buck Showalter that a new guy coming in. I mean, David Stearns didn't even talk to Buck Showalter. This was, Steve Cohen, the owner, talking to David Stearns saying, what do you want to do? Do you want your own guy? And he said, yeah. And then it was them taking care of it for David Stearns, which is, if you're going to make a change, then it was probably the way to protect David Stearns from doing it. Let Steve Cohen do it. If Buck Showalter wants to manage again, he can manage again. He'll find a job out there, I would assume. You wonder about the Padres, what they're going to do with Bob Melvin. And Showalter managed Manny Machado in Baltimore with some pretty good success along the way. So you wonder if there might be a fit there with them. The Giants are in win now mode. They're going to spend some money this offseason. So you wonder where they're going to go. Very analytical organization. He felt like Kapler was like, if he wasn't analytic enough for them, then I don't know that anybody's analytic enough for them. So it'll be interesting to see what direction they head there. And there's some speculation. Nobody knows what the Angels are doing right now. There's just, there's some noise out there about Phil Nevin, who just, took the 1-year deal. They got Perry Minasian and their general manager. Artie Moreno, you don't know what he's doing. And so, there are still some teams that I think are going to sort through. But yeah, there's going to be some changes out there in the managers. I could see Gibby. Gibby always looked good in blue and orange back in the day. So I could see a little New York action right there. It would be fun.
Hey, I'd like to see you in Boston, man. Beantown.
Oh yeah, that's you know what? I've always said I wouldn't really want to come back and do that, because at the end of the day, somebody wins and somebody loses, and I don't have an owner's son calling me right now that I could be a GM for 30 teams and never have a problem with anybody. But they do pay those guys a lot of money right now too, so it's it'll be interesting to see what they do up in Boston, because it is a great franchise. We'll see.
It is. Well, Stevie, listen, man, we can't thank you enough, pal.
My pleasure.
True professional, man. You know your money. Nobody's ever 100%, man. You know, everything you say makes sense. You're thorough with it all. We appreciate that, and our fans will appreciate that.
Hey, listen, glad to do it. Happy to visit with you guys again. Look forward to it, and look forward to joining you again in the future.
All righty. Take care.
Thank you so much.
All right, guys, you got it.
That wraps up another Gabbing with Gibby. Steve Phillips, man, he is a great analyst. What great observations, predictions, and just your discussion with him and our discussion with him. It really educates you on just about everything that's going on in this wild, crazy playoff season that's about to kick off.
Yeah, he's a real pro, and he was a really good GM, and we were teammates. We started in the Mets minor league system, so I go way back with him, and very thorough, very prepared. He very in depth and all that stuff. I can't say enough good things. He's a very smart baseball guy and just an all around good dude.
Yeah, another great guest on Gabbing with Gibby, which we do each and every week, and now inspired by our friends at Miller Lite, it's time for this week's Roast and Toast. Gibby, another question for you as we get ready to roast somebody. Did the fans ever really annoy you to the point that you wish they weren't there?
Oh, yeah. but I also know who pays your salaries, for crying out loud.
Mm-hmm. Well, one prominent MLB pitcher seems like he would be happy if the fans were not there. In an interview with MLB Fits last week, Atlanta Braves starter and one of the brightest stars of the pitching staff for Atlanta, Spencer Strider, made his feelings known about fans at the games he gets paid to play in front of. When asked about his hottest baseball take, Strider said, quote, "There should be no fans. 2020, no fans. Get rid of the fans. It's too loud. Everybody be quiet. We don't need the cheering. We know you're watching. I don't need the fans. Stay outside the stadium. Or let's do like a no lower bowl thing. Stay in the upper decks. That's great. Outfield, phenomenal. But we just don't need you around the bullpen. Just try to be quiet." And in previous statements, Strider has said, "I'm not a fan of the public as a whole." So he doubled down in this interview. There's no doubt that this week, the roast of the week has got to go to Spencer Strider of the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, maybe hopefully he was joking. I don't know if it could be that serious. Well, I hope if they get the World Series against the Blue Jays, and he happens to be pitching in Toronto. They got the new bullpens down there where it's up their level with the fans. Oh, could you?
That'll drive him nuts. Can you imagine?
They'd be killing him. But oh god, you remember that one? What year was it when they had in Baltimore? They played a game with no fans there, because of I think they're rioting around town.
Yes,
they played a game. There was nobody in the stands, and I don't think people enjoyed that much. He's probably outnumbered on his thinking.
Yeah, I would think he would be outnumbered, and I would think that your good buddy Alex should have a little chit chat with him and say, "Hey, listen." No, any of us.
Well, obviously it's not going to happen, but anybody that pitches that good, you just kind of get out of their way, just let them say what they want.
That's it.
Maybe they'll come dressed up. Remember when they used to wear the garbage bag over their head, the paper bag on for really bad teams, or come dressed as a seat or something. Maybe that's what they'll do.
It'll be interesting to watch as the season progresses into the playoffs with Spencer Strider. So interesting comments from him. This week we have the toast of the week as well, and throughout the baseball season we have watched as they've showed flashes of brilliance, assembled arguably the best pitching staff in the major leagues. They have frustrated their fan base, caused epidemics of nail biting and churning stomachs, and they provided a season full of excitement and hope. This past weekend, they made it to October as a playoff team, squeaking into gain that third and final wild card spot in the American League. And now the push to the World Series has begun. It won't be easy, but they are in. Our toast of the week goes to the Toronto Blue Jays. Best of luck, guys, in the postseason, Jays.
Yeah, Johnny, hey, it was a long road, but you know what? Hey, get in, and fans get frustrated with all that. You set expectations, and very rarely does teams just run away with things, right? That's there's ups and downs, and everybody wants to jump ship, and everybody wants to know what's going on. And I gotta tip your hat to the team and the coaching staff for a full speed ahead. Let's go, take your shots, and you know what, we'll get there in the end. And that's what they did. And so now it's time for everybody to just enjoy the ride, because they got a chance to win it. And but we salute them. Everybody in the organization put together another playoff team, caliber team. The front office and of course the players and coach staff carried that out, and a wonderful fan base. So enjoy it.
Exactly. Enjoy it.
Corner booths, sticky floors, weekdays that feel like weekends. You never forget the way some things taste. Miller Lite, great taste, 90 calories. Tastes like Miller time.
Before we do wrap up this edition of the Gibby Show, we would like to pay tribute and salute somebody in Major League Baseball that we lost way too young. Gibby, can you give us your comments on the passing of Tim Wakefield?
Yeah, Johnny, I spoke with him one time. I really didn't know Tim, but I knew of him, and I watched how he carried himself. These are the situations, regardless of what you did for the game on the field, this is life, and he was a wonderful guy. Everything you hear, wonderful family man, just a great representative of the Boston Red Sox and of life and his family, and he had a tremendous career, gone way too early. And, but we salute him. We all feel for the baseball world.
Yes, we certainly do. And thank you for those comments, Gibby. That's going to wrap up this edition of the Gibby Show. For John Gibbons, this is John Arezzi. We'll be back with you to talk more playoff baseball right here on the Gibby Show next week as the 2023 Blue Jays begin their playoff run. Have a great week, everyone, and go Jays.